exciting. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that this is not a fire hose of information coming at you. But at the same token, sometimes it's nice to have a lot of things coming at you so that you can sort of process and digest them later on. You'll be getting a copy of the slide deck and of the session, the video recorded session. So it certainly will be helpful. So yeah, I'm Mary Howard, recently retired 6th grade teacher, but I've been staying very, very active in the educational realm. I'm now actually working as an adjunct professor at Buffalo State University. So I'm in the other side of the country, and still working with student teachers and things like that. So it's kind of an exciting time of change. But I really do enjoy talking about artificial intelligence and sharing all of the wonderful things that our artificial intelligence can do for us educators in the classroom. So as Lauren mentioned, we have an hour together, but there is some built-in work time. So I'm going to start with basically 2 categories of ways that artificial intelligence tools can support educators in the classroom. One of them is AI planning ideas. So this is part of the fire hose that I mentioned. I'm going to share with you some things that you may not have thought of that AI can do to support you in planning instruction for your classroom. So we're going to go through 9 or 10 examples here. Then we're going to switch over and we're going to talk about how AI can support student engagement and actually a little bit of things that it can do in the classroom with students in different projects that they can do using AI to support their learning. Needless to say, there's always that challenge. We don't want it to replace their thinking, but I've come up with several ways that I think are appropriate for any age group as well as any content area that I think you'll be excited to see, because it's just a way to really low risk way to bring AI into your classrooms. Then of course, time to build. We'll have about 15 minutes or so to give some of these examples a try. Then be prepared to hopefully share, maybe reflect or talk about what you did or what you discovered while you were working on some of the ideas that I'm sharing. So that's the goal. And so hopefully at the end of our session today, you'll have maybe a lesson that you've created or enhanced using artificial intelligence tools, and maybe even a use case you could try right away. Maybe you can try it tomorrow in your classrooms. And then hopefully a simple understanding of how to use AI responsibly with your students. So starting off with why use AI, it's always one of those things we need to talk about. And AI now, as I'm sure you're discovering, is becoming ubiquitous. You can't pick up your phone without having AI actually acting as a search engine. You can't look at any kind of social media anymore without looking at it and not being able to discern what's real and what is artificial intelligence. So we all know that it's everywhere. And so at this point, educators are really climbing on board with this idea that AI can be a support for teaching and learning, not to replace either of those things, but definitely can support us. So it can give us enhanced planning experience to look at, and it can increase student engagement with ideas for use in the classroom. And we're going to look at those today. So, as I'm rolling along here, just kind of think, in the back of your mind, where in your lesson planning process do you get stuck, or where do you spend the most time? If you had a tool that kind of alleviate a task or two, not communicating with parents, I'm sorry, but you still have to do that one, communicating with families. But what one task, kind of those administrative tasks, do you think perhaps AI could help you with? And sort of keep that in the back of your mind. Now, in terms of the tools that I'm going to focus on, I'm really limiting things to just the Google Gemini chatbot. That would look like this if you've not accessed it before. You would simply type gemini.google.com. And I'm going to be kind of showing some ways that you can prompt Google Gemini to retrieve information to support you. And then later on, I'm going to pop on over and talk a little bit about Canva, because I understand that many of us have access to Canva. And I'm going to show an example or two of ways that we can use Canva, the AI features in Canva, to support some things for students in the classroom. So those are the 2 primary tools we're going to look at. And if you are going to be working alongside me as we go, it certainly would not hurt to have Gemini at the very least open in a separate tab. And then hopefully you've seen in the chat, the slide deck, it has been shared. I encourage you to open the link to the slide deck as I go along, because the one thing I have done is I've embedded a ton of links into this slide deck. Many of them are project links. Many of them are templates for you to use. They're copies of Google documents that I've created for you to make copies. And a lot of them are kind of good starters for some projects that you can create. So if you are brand new to prompting a chatbot, it is really as simple as typing something in the prompt bar. So this screen is just kind of showing you, if you've gone on to Google Gemini and you're looking at it and you're not sure where to start or what to do, it really is quite as simple as prompting in the prompt bar. And so that's what we're going to be showing, are a whole bunch of examples of how you can prompt. And then the second tool, as I mentioned, we're going to be using Canva later on. And the tool I'm specifically going to focus on is something called Canva's Magic Media Tool. So if you're following along and you open up Canva, you might want to take a second and see if you can find this Canva's Magic Media Tool, because we're going to play with that briefly. Okay, so let's turn on the fire hose, and I'm going to share a whole bunch of examples of ways that Gemini or a chatbot, you could also use ChatGPT, how it can support instructional planning. So one of the things I like to think of when I think of educators in the classroom is this work by Harvey Silver. It's the Thoughtful Classroom. And, we know that we do, millions and millions of tasks during the course of a school year. But this is really nice because it's been organized in a way that categorizes the work we do. So we know that, we have times in our work that we do organization tasks and rules creations and procedural tasks. And we know that we try to create classrooms that engage students and tasks that students can enjoy. A lot of our job revolves around building positive relationships. And finally, we always try to promote a culture of thinking and learning. And it's kind of an amazing thing to think that AI can support educators in all of these categories. And so I try to keep these in the back of my mind when I'm prompting a chatbot to generate and create some things for the classroom. So I'm going to share with you 9 thoughts or 9 ideas of ways that chatbots such as Google Gemini could create something to support your instructional planning. And the first one is literally lesson planning. It's something we might not think of, but Gemini or a chatbot can generate a lesson plan with a step-by-step suggestion on how to implement that lesson plan. And each of the slides that you're going to see in this section are going to be set up in the exact same way. We're going to have a section where I'm telling you what the skill is that Gemini can do for us. And in this box here, this is a suggested prompt. So when we get to the point where you have an opportunity to try some of these tasks, you can use a prompt like this in the chat bar to create something. And then on the right-hand side over here, this is the actual AI output that I received when I used that prompt. So in this circumstance, I was trying to get a lesson plan for a middle school science teacher on in the 5E format, an investigative format, and the topic was teaching photosynthesis. And so I prompted the bot, and indeed, I got a very, very thorough lesson plan. Now, sometimes when you're prompting in a chatbot, you prompt it and you don't get what you want. When you're playing around in there, I want to encourage you to re-prompt and re-ask for the things that you want if it doesn't give you what you want initially. Also, if you continue asking your questions and asking for the content, ask follow-up questions. Perhaps it gives you something that's good, but it's too high of a level, too low of a level, or you want more to go with it, or it gives you stations but doesn't give you stations tasks, things like that. Continue to do follow-up prompts, because that's how you make the most of working with a chatbot. So idea number 1 to help you plan is literally lesson plans. The second prompt here is generating a list of standards. So very often we have an existing lesson that we're doing, but we're not quite sure where it fits into our scope and sequence or where it fits into our standards. So some people refer to this as shot prompting, but what you can do is you can actually upload your lesson plan or your even pictures of a lesson that you've done. You can upload them into a chatbot and then ask the question, look this over and let me know what standards are aligned to this lesson that I've been teaching for years. And it's sort of reversing it for you, but it helps out a lot because then you don't have to pour through and try to figure out what it's aligned with. Okay. Task number 3, it seems rather generic, but I have found this one to be incredibly helpful along the way. And that is just the ability for artificial intelligence to generate lists of any type. The example I'm showing here on the screen is just a list of positive comments that you could place on a report card or, a progress report for students. And you could do positive comments, you could do growth comments, you could do negative comments if you need to. And it's just amazing how, these chatbots never really run out of ideas for us. And the other nice thing about it too is you could modify a prompt such as this, and you could say, well, these are too long. I need it to be only 60 characters or 40 characters, or maybe I need it a little bit more specific. Maybe I need it to be 300 characters. So you can modify the length that the chatbot gives back to you when you're prompting. And so it's kind of a helpful way to get some lists of information. A lot of times I'll use it to give me examples of things. Now, this one is actually the first slide in this slide deck that has a link at the bottom of the slide. And it is a link to this site called Puzzle Maker. And it's kind of a mashup, I guess you could say, of a skill that a chatbot can do for you, but then when you can take the content that it's created, put it somewhere else, and actually have a resource that you can walk away with to use in your classroom right away. In this case, the topic is defining vocabulary. So, yes, we've used, online dictionaries, or we've just typed things in a computer search engine to get us a definition. But what's nice about chatbots is we can get bulk definitions. So say we know all the vocabulary words that we need for our class or our unit that we're doing, we can ask a chatbot to bulk define all of those words. We can also ask it to define them in a way that's understandable for 3rd graders or 6th graders or for 11th graders for that matter. So we can get very specific on the type of definition we get back from chatbots. But we can also have it do all of the vocab thinking for us. So the example I have right here is I was doing stations with my students, and the bane of a lot of teachers' existence sometimes is early finishers. Some of them, what do I do next? What do I do now? Or if they don't have something to do, they're going to go maybe make not the best choices. And so I always like to have something for them to do. And this is really great because for my crime scene that they were working on, no, we were reading. We were doing some work with a book. And I wanted them to just have a bunch of words associated with the mystery genre. So I asked a chatbot to generate me this list of words and definitions. But what was really great is I could take that list, copy it, and then paste it into Puzzle Maker. And I was able to make a word search. I was able to make a crossword puzzle. I was able to turn that word list into flashcards right off the bat. So we could take that information and put it into another resource and instantly have something. So at the beginning of our presentation, we talked about the end of the school year is near. And I have to say, one of the things I've used, and I very rarely use word searches, but the one time I do use word searches is on June 25th. So you could just ask a chatbot such as Gemini to create a list of terms associated with summer. Make me 30 terms associated with summer. You could then copy those terms, go on over to Puzzle Maker, and ask it to create a word search for you. Give it out to the students. I had one student, she was an early finisher and she loved Pokemon, and I kept asking for lists of Pokemon and lists of names of Pokemon, and I kept turning them into word searches, and she'd do it really fast and she'd ask me for another one. And so it's kind of an on-demand way of getting resources that fit what you're doing. And so very quickly, I'm going to click on Puzzle Maker so you can take a peek at what it looks like. It is very, very easy to use, and this is free, and it's been around for a very, very long time. And as you can see across the top, there are many different categories of things that you can do and create. And so you can use, again, a chatbot such as Gemini to create the words or the words and definitions that you need. And then once they're ready, you can go ahead and you can paste them in right here to create your puzzle or create whatever it is that you'd like. And so that's something you might be interested in playing with or working on when we have our task time. Okay, skill number 5 is immensely helpful, especially for differentiating our instruction. So very often we have students that are at different skill levels within our classroom, and chatbots are extremely, extremely efficient and effective at writing things for us. And so my prompt is very simple. It's just write a reading passage about the 3 states of matter, but I said suitable for a 4th grade class. And so I have this passage here that it has written for me. But what's nice is I can also say, now rewrite this passage suitable for someone who's reading at a lower grade level, or perhaps even a more challenging grade level. Or I can say, please make sure you're using this specific vocabulary in this passage that you are writing for me. And so I can add that to my prompt. Once the passage is written, and this is the part that I always love, you can then follow up with a prompt in your chatbot asking for it to generate some multiple choice questions to go along with the passage. Generate me some true or false questions. Generate some fill in the blank questions. And so you have kind of this ability to build yourself content and build yourself maybe even a worksheet or a resource that you can use right away in the classroom without too much effort. So something to consider. Now, grading rubrics are not the easiest thing to write all of the time. And it's nice to know that a chatbot has the ability to create a rubric for you. So the example that I have right here is relatively basic. The more specific you are with the prompt, the better the rubric you can get. But when I prompted and I asked for an analytical rubric for a poster project that I was doing, and I asked it for 5 performance levels. So what that means essentially, it was going from top to bottom. It was going to give me a performance level on the content and accuracy and the depth. And then it was, it kind of makes these up. And then across the top, of course, the criteria for grading, exemplary all the way down to unsatisfactory. The more you give it again, the better the rubric is that you're going to get. So for a poster project, I could say maybe this is a poster project on the solar system, or it's a poster project on a specific book that the students have read. And you can even upload your own content and have the AI analyze your content and get very, very specific with a rubric to match exactly what it is that you gave to the students for their project. So I find rubric creation to be one of the most helpful things that AI can do for us in just kind of lifting the load. And what's really nice too is sometimes I find it very easy to come up with my 5s and very easy to come up with my 1s, but I struggle with the stuff in between. How do I change these words when I'm building my own rubric? That's something AI can also support us with. So if you already know what your high is going to sound like and look like, and you've got the wording, and you know what the low is going to sound like and look like, you can ask AI to just make the proficient, the developing, and the beginning language for you as well. So it's something you might be interested in playing with, is generating a grading rubric. A couple more examples here. I did show you kind of generating lists, and this sort of goes hand in hand with generating lists, and that is just asking it to generate examples for us. I'm waking up in the morning, and if you haven't figured it out, I was a science teacher, and I have to teach kinetic energy, but I have no kinetic energy myself, and how am I going to come up with examples? So asking AI to generate examples for us, asking AI to generate topics or elements for an exit ticket for a classroom or an entrance pass, using it to support those types of tasks is tremendously helpful. So there's a prompt and an example for you to take a look at. And then mentor text. So in this situation, sometimes I give an assignment to a student, but I really am not positive what that writing piece needs to look like, especially when I'm working with a co-teacher or a collaborative teacher. And then sometimes they're coaching a student, but they're not certain what it is that we're looking for. It's sometimes nice to have AI write that demonstration model that you give to a co-teacher, or that you can sort of use to calibrate yourself and what your expectations may need to be. So in this case, it's just mentor text that was written to model writing for the students. And it was a CER, a claim evidence reasoning piece of writing. And I told it what the investigation was that the students did. And then I asked it to sort of give me a sample. So I had a good idea of, perhaps what I need to expect. And then this is kind of a slippery slope, but you can use AI to support grading to a certain extent. I don't advise having AI do our grading for us, our assessment for us, but it can help, especially if you have a pre-established rubric that you're using for your grading and you want to sort of self-calibrate. You can take a piece of writing or a piece of student work, upload it to a chatbot, and have it, and upload the rubric as well, and have it evaluate it. And a lot of times it's kind of interesting to see how it does the evaluation and to compare it to how you would have assessed that student. And so that's what this final example in this section is. Now, I have referenced a couple of times uploading information into Gemini. And so I'm going to show that briefly. I'm going to pop into Gemini just for a minute so you can see what I mean when I'm saying upload content into Gemini. But those 9 examples, honestly, only scratch the surface of the types of things that AI bot like Gemini can do to support an educator. You know, it can help you in, organizing information, and I have a whole bunch of examples here. It can support vocabulary more than just the one way that I showed you. There's just a tremendous number of things it can do. And again, I'm going to show you how Gemini can interact with your content. I'm going to show you how you can upload things, and you can ask it to analyze things, alter things, change things, rewrite things, level things, all sorts of wonderful ways to interact with content. And then, of course, our students with special needs, this is just one more assistive tool to support them, especially when we need to differentiate content in our classrooms or modify content and modify learning objectives for students. And so it's just a very exciting time to have this to support us. So when you're working in Gemini, perhaps you're trying one of these samples and you have, let's say you want to make that rubric and you want to upload your lesson to Gemini so it can look at it to help you make that rubric. It's really as simple as clicking this plus sign right here. And I hope we can see this. I'm going to make this as big as possible because I know sometimes it shows up very tiny on your screen. Let me back out of that. That did not help us. Okay, so this plus sign right here is going to allow you to upload a file. So if you have a file that's resident on your computer, you can attach that file just like you would with an email. If you have something on your Google Drive, you can pull it in from your Google Drive. You can also upload images and other types of things. But that's the spot where you would upload a file. And then you would simply type your prompt right here. Please create me a rubric to work with this lesson. And then you see what you get. Okay. So that was our first section. So that was 9 ideas to hopefully maybe play around with in just a few moments to support you in planning and lesson development. But now we're going to dive a little bit more deeply with the kind of lens of, what if we used AI as a support in our classroom, whether that means putting it into the students' hands to a certain extent, or whether that means using it to liven up our own classroom in kind of unique ways. So we titled this Increasing Student Engagement with AI Use, but I think it's a little broader than that. So we'll dive right in and I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So when we think about AI in the classroom, one of the things we have to kind of think about is if students are using AI, that means we as educators probably have to shift the way we're doing our instruction. We don't really want to just ask students what the answer is anymore if we know they have that tool in their hands, so we can ask things in a different way. We could say, do you agree with the response that AI gave you? Or perhaps is something missing here? Is this accurate information? What would you change? How do you know this is correct? What evidence do you have? Or what do you know that says or supports the fact that this is a correct answer? And also, we want to think about shifting the tasks that we do in our classrooms. So, you think of the Bloom's taxonomy of learning, instead of focusing on, let's remember this fact and, apply kind of those lower level Bloom's taxonomy things, we want to get more deep into evaluating and justifying and even creating. We want to be in that realm when we're working in our classrooms in this new age of AI. And then the pedagogy is kind of the part that I'm going to share with you today is, what's our classroom going to look like now? And how can we shift in our classroom with this tool's existence. And so we're going to find, I think, moving forward, we are going to move a little bit away from silent work and worksheets and one correct answer to questions, and even necessarily a teacher-led explanation or individuals doing things and answered focused tasks. I think we're moving from this into a world where our classrooms are almost livelier. We're going to have way more student discussion happening. We're going to be evaluating multiple perspectives on things, having reasoning happening aloud with students. The collaborative thinking comes into play, and then tasks that students do that are more explanation focused. And so with this, I've kind of come up with a few ideas that tap into good old-fashioned strategies that we may have seen or known, but never really thought of them through this lens. And the one last thing is, if you are a Next Generation Science Standard school or familiar with the Next Generation Science Standards, just a nod to Next Gen, because they have it right in terms of the way students should be thinking. You know, all of these focus areas about explaining and arguing and asking questions and developing models, engaging in discussion and defending their reasoning. You know, this is what it should look like now. This is kind of where we need to be heading. And so here are the ideas. And before we do the ideas, I always feel like I have to talk briefly about putting AI into students' hands in a responsible way, because we can't let them loose with AI. We can't just necessarily, without guardrails in place naturally. And so it is important as an educator to teach them how to use AI safely. Often that comes through different conversations you can have with students, letting them know what is an appropriate use of artificial intelligence and what is not an appropriate use. This is a sample that I came up with, and I believe this is clickable if this is something you'd like to use in your classroom. But making sure that we don't just launch an AI tool into a classroom without putting up the guardrails and without having the conversations about what ethical use is and what ethical use means. And so I just have to put that out there before we talk about how we're going to get students using artificial intelligence. So my first example for you is a strategy called the Diamond Discourse. And this can be used in a multitude of ways. But one suggestion here is, and so this focuses on collaborative thinking. And this is an image from when I did this in my classroom on my science lab tables, which students always like writing in these chalk markers on lab tables. It wipes off very beautifully. They love doing it. But the way this works is you introduce a concept, and you can have each student write their understanding of a concept on one segment of a piece of paper. I chose colored groups, and so I passed out pink, and I think I had yellow, I had green, I had blue, and each student wrote their own understanding of a concept. Where AI can come into this is, rather than having students write their understanding of a concept, they could use AI to research the response to the question, and they can kind of synthesize that and write that on their square. So it's inviting AI into this conversation, because when one student is prompting AI over here and asking a question, and another one is prompting over here, you can be certain that it will not give them the exact same response. And so that's always a really interesting thing about AI, is every time you prompt a chatbot, it gives back an authentic response, and it's the first time it's ever written that response. Everything is novel each time it's produced. So once you have the students do this step number 2, they individually write their understanding of a concept, and they can write it on a little right triangle. Then you put the students into groups, and so they all come to the group with their triangle, with their understanding of whatever the question is that you asked. And then they come together and form a consensus. And so we talked about what it means to form a consensus. And many times, they want, mine's the right one. And they talk about it. And so then they come up with a group explanation. And then that's what they were writing in the center of this diamond. And so they call it Diamond Discourse, because you're bringing the heads together, and then they're all coming together. And they're, in the end, what have they done? Well, they've actually now seen an appropriate response 4 times to a question. And so in terms of scaffolding students and differentiating instruction, we've kind of brought the ones up a little bit higher because they've seen the answer now 4 times and they've heard it 4 times, and now they're actually part of this consensus. So it brings in consensus modeling, and it brings in multiple perspectives and collaborative thinking. So it's a really powerful strategy that you can try in your classroom. So number 2 here is a good old-fashioned Kagan structure known as round robin. The idea is very similar in a sense that, you know, you give them a prompt or you give them a thought that you need them to talk about or consider. And so they come together as a team. Each person in the group gets to share what they think their answer might be. You could even give them an opportunity to research it, but come to their group with what they've investigated, and then they just do a round robin sharing in their little group. So it's like the Diamond Discourse, but it's a little bit of a faster version. And I believe this is a poster that is clickable, if that's something that you would like to print off or use in your classroom. Now, reasoning and explaining really come into play when we're putting AI into the hands of students. And so there's 2 examples here on this page. Both are clickable templates that you can attain a copy of. I believe they're both Google slide documents that it'll force you to make a copy, but then you can then edit them to see fit how you'd like to use them. The first pyramid summary is, I'd like to think of it as kind of AI proof in a sense that when students, let's say they've read a passage that you give them for homework, or they read a section in a book or something, the pyramid summary is basically they go from the bottom to the top in order numerically, and they have to fill in each one of these boxes based on the prompt that's on the bottom. So I believe the first 2 on the bottom is they have to list a fact from the passage or the reading that they feel is important, and they have to find a second fact that they feel is important. Actually, this is also a fact. So it's 3 facts across the bottom. And then these 2 boxes become important vocabulary words that they feel they need to remember based on the passage. And then the top box is 1 question they have about what they've read. So this is nice because it's a novel way of students to kind of analyze a passage. Where you can bring in AI to it is you could have AI, the student prompt AI to write the passage on the topic. You know, so say we're looking at, I'm going to think of a social studies example, you know, that maybe the building of the pyramids, and the students have, and, you know, ask AI to give them an answer to a question about the pyramids. Well, they have to read what AI wrote. They have to then synthesize it. They have to bring it into the pyramid summary and do all of this to show that they've read it, they've understood it, they synthesized it, and then they're kind of adding it to the summary. So that's one way to get them to use it. And then for years, I've used these 3-2-1 summaries. And all this is students read a passage. So it could be an AI written passage. It could be something that you provide to them. And they have to write their own 3 facts from the passage, 2 questions that they still have about the passage, and then 1 opinion. And they have to write that in a paragraph summary. So I find that those are 2 good ways to get students to respond to things that they're reading. And discussion, as my little list showed, that discussion is a really important thing for us to get students to do. So we're going to find that our classrooms are a little bit more engaging in terms of discussion, and this is just one way to facilitate that. So I like to introduce these 3 styles of question stems to my students: interpersonal, understanding, and self-expressive. And I usually have a chatbot write me 6 questions in each of these categories, depending on whatever topic I want my students to discuss. So maybe they were talking about an eclipse. We had an eclipse a year or so ago. And so I have them get together in groups with 3 die, a yellow, a white, and a green. And then they roll the die. And whatever it lands on, the yellow die, if it lands on number 3, then that student is going to talk about question number 3 on the sheet. And then the next person rolls the yellow die, and then another person in the group rolls it. So we keep kind of rotating around and taking turns. And so it's facilitating discussions. Where the AI comes into this, obviously it makes your classroom much more dynamic because you are having discussions. But where you could use this is kind of wrapping right back around to the beginning when I said it is important to talk to your students about AI and ethics and things like that. So I turned this into an actual lesson on AI ethics, which if you are interested in it, you can click on it and it is a downloadable copy. But this way we can give them this sheet, we can give them the dice, put them in small groups, and they're talking about the ethics of AI, and it's guided through the dice roll and it's guided through the questions that are here on the sheet. So I thought that might be a kind of a good way to see this one in action with a different topic besides eclipses. So this is just a closer look at the 3 different types of question. So the first type of question are personal. These types of questions reach emotions or feelings about topics. So I prompted the chat bot and I said, could you write me 6 questions that reach emotions or feelings about the topic of artificial intelligence use? And it wrote me these 6 questions. Then I said, again to AI, could you write me 6 questions about artificial intelligence that assess directly students' understanding about the topic? Questions that are suitable for 6th graders. And it wrote me these ones. And then finally, I told AI I was looking for self-expressive questions that would really make them think about artificial intelligence and maybe even apply their understanding to new situations. And it gave me these 6 questions. So the template is fully editable for you to use if you want to kind of adapt it, modify it, and maybe bring it into your classroom to facilitate some discussion. And then I said I was going to talk a little bit about Canva. This project is near and dear to me because it was such a fun project to do with students, and it was using that Magic Media tool that I pointed out to you at the very beginning. And this is just a way to get students using AI, but in my opinion, it's a much safer way because it's only having them use AI art and not using a chat bot to prompt or retrieve information. So this is a clickable template that you can get in Canva, and it was designed to look like a creature trading card. And the task for the students is to create a hybrid creature by combining 2 things together. My sample earlier in the slide deck, you may have noticed it was a rhinoceros butterfly. I don't know if any of you looked at it close enough to notice that it was a very odd looking creature, but I prompted AI's Magic Media tool and I said, could you make me a creature that's a hybrid of a rhinoceros and a butterfly? Here, my student did a combination of a frog and a chicken, and she delightfully named it the Frickin'. And she was very excited with her frickin'. And then she wrote about the habitat of the frickin' and what it would need to survive and things like that. So it's a neat way to have them, kind of use AI, but use it in sort of a different way because it's the art feature. And while we're on the art feature, one other way you can adapt and bring in just a tiny bit of AI in the form of AI art is when you're working with your Fryer models with students. So this is an example of a digital Fryer model that I created for the Westing game, the book that we were reading. And so I would always have the students have the key vocabulary word, and I would let them go ahead and investigate their vocabulary word. They would come up with synonyms, come up with antonyms, and right here, I would let them use AI to generate a picture that would correspond with whatever the word was. So let's say the word was skeptical, and they asked AI to create a picture to represent skeptical, and I let them put that picture in, but they had to explain what it was about that picture that represents being skeptical. And in my mind, that's where the learning came in. That was where, the connection was made. They were having a little bit of fun because they got to use an AI art feature, but at the same time, they were making a true solid connection to the meaning of the word because they had to analyze the art that AI came up with. Okay, I've got 2 more and then we've got our work time. So I'm gonna go a little bit fast because I wanna make sure we get that work time in. A prompting challenge is always a fun thing to do in your classrooms. This time you get to create something crazy with using AI art. And if you're an English teacher and we talk about specificity and writing, in specific ways with students, they have to see if they can prompt in a way that would generate the most similar picture to what you created. So it's a really good way to get them, being imaginative and using the correct words to be descriptive with their writing. So they often enjoy prompting challenges to create images. And that can be done in the Nano Banana portion of Google Gemini, or it can be done in the Canva Magic Media. And then last but not least, I encourage you to consider using choice boards for anything that you're doing in your classroom. But honestly, adding AI art is an option into a choice board. So I wanted you to see a sample of one that I've used in my classroom in my figurative language unit. So I don't just have students, tell me what figurative language is, or find an example of figurative language. I let them choose from 12 options of things that they can do to demonstrate their understanding of figurative language. And I implemented AI art in there. I'm like, why not have them use AI art to represent an idiom and then explain the art that was created by AI? And honestly, a lot of times students want to draw their own art, because I find that in every classroom I usually have 4 artists and the rest hate drawing. That was often the case. But this way, there's space for both. The students that want to do it themselves, or the students that want to use AI, and they kind of have to explain how it represents the concept. So just one more option for you to consider, and maybe you want to play around with the choice board during our task time, which we finally made it to. So the task time now is, I really want to encourage you to create something for your classroom. We've got 2 options. And so to kind of back up here, we started off with kind of ways that you can support your instruction, your lesson plan development, or modifying existing lessons. So during this 15 minutes, you may want to go back to the original 9 that I shared with you and see if any of those options, any of those prompts can support you in modifying an existing lesson, or differentiating it, or enhancing it, or maybe even creating a new one. So you could work on that. Option 2 is all of those things I recently showed you in the second section had clickable templates built into them. So maybe you want to grab one of those templates and look at it and edit it, modify it, download it, change it, or even adopt one of the collaborative tasks to use in your classroom in an upcoming lesson. So I'd say option 2 would be, maybe you can implement a little AI art, or some AI design strategy in your classroom. So I will be monitoring our chat. If people do have questions, you're certainly welcome to ask questions. But I'm going to start the timer and give us about 15 minutes to do a task. And then with what time we have left, hopefully we can share and reflect.
I just dropped the slide deck in there as well if anyone needs it. And then do you guys want music while we work on our task? Yes? Okay, I see some nodding. I will play some music quietly. Mary, are you okay if I take over sharing?
I don't mind at all.
Okay, thank you. We have Warm Spring Morning Jazz. We'll see how this one is.
Wearing all hats, it could be exhausting, right? Well, that's why I started using Upwork. It's been a total game changer. Upwork makes
Lauren, can I share what I just did?
Yeah, go for it.
So I used AI. My daughter's in ninth grade, so I feel like I'm in ninth grade again, helping her with her homework. So like integrated math one, French, you name it. I'm learning it too. And of course, she decided to take French, which I don't know. I know Spanish. So I just put what her tutor wants her to practice into chat and said, I'm making a crossword puzzle using the puzzle maker. Help me make a list of like, the answers and the clues. And so now I have this list that I'm going to pick and pull from, and I'm going to make her several crosswords that she's going to have to do over the weekend. So I don't know if I can do that with math, but I can definitely do that with French because apparently conjugation is very hard for her.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah, so fun.
Mary, do we have a few minutes left still on the work time?
Yeah, it says about 4 minutes. If you feel like we should wrap up, we can certainly do that. If people want to share things they've come up with, we could do that.
Yeah, maybe we should see if people want to share what they came up with.
Yeah. Amanda opened the door for it, which I love.
Yeah,
Thank
she
you.
kicked it off for us.
I did.
Addie
Anything
should
to help
love
with
those.
French homework. She's probably going to hate it, to be honest.
No, that was sarcasm.
I keep reminding her, I'm like, I'm a teacher, right? Like, I literally went to college to learn how to teach people things. And she was like, well, it's obvious that you didn't learn how to teach math.
Oh, ouch. That's a lot of sass there.
So much sass. That's what happens when we replicate ourselves.
Yeah, the little clones. Does anybody have anything else they want to share? Maybe something they discovered or were able to create during the little time? We had about 12 minutes.
You can unmute and you can share your screen or tell us, or you can drop it in the chat if you'd like. But we kind of love to see what you guys are here, what you worked on.
Oh, and also I noticed somebody asked for access to one of the documents, and I did grant that access. I think it might have been you, Sarah. No. Anyway, if you find that you've any of the links you don't have access to, by all means request it, and I can reverse that. Sometimes that happens. Either everybody's really working hard, they're in shock, or too shy.
I'll put all of your names in a little like bucket and pull them out. Come on now.
Don't do that. Or even if you saw something that might be useful, you can go that direction too.
Or if you have a question, all of the above, we'd love to hear it. Oh, Claudia just dropped in. She created a puzzle to do with vocabulary words. Amazing. Seems like was that with a discovery?
Yeah, the puzzle. It's funny. It's kind
Yeah.
of old became new again, which I always find very amusing. So AI has a tendency to do that.
Yeah. It's a good resource. I haven't seen it before.
Really?
So, yeah. Yeah. That was the first time. So that's, very fun.
Got a couple puzzle makers. That's great.
Are there maybe any ideas from, oh yeah, the puzzle maker. Any ideas from like Mary's slide deck that you want to try with your class? Like some of those ways that she shared of integrating, AI into your classroom with your students? Oh, there we go. Maybe we just had people typing. We need to give time for typing.
Well, while people are typing, I wish I had gotten the prompt. Molly was showing me earlier today, one of our coworkers, she's got this little like recipe card that she was doing with her daughter's second grade class where they had to pick like something fun, or I forget what the prompt was, but something about their school year. And then they could pick who was going to be in the picture, what it was going to be about, and what style they wanted the picture to be. And so then the kids came up one by one, and she, they had already written everything out. So she typed it all in as a parent volunteer, and Gemini created the picture for them. And they, would make 1 or 2 or 3 to see which one the kids liked best. And then they're going to get to print those out and then put them in either Seesaw or something like that to share, this image. Like you said, not all students are artists. And so to have this super cool photo in like whatever format that they or artistic style, I thought was really cool.
See your words turn into art. Like it's got to be like magic for them. That's really neat. Yeah. Yeah. Write that one down for next time. That's great.
Yeah, we'll have to get that slide deck too, because she's built like a really great like template people could replicate even for like different grade levels too. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Montes used Diffit to make a self-grading Google quiz to help teachers and students prepare for a test.
Perfect.
Montes, I don't know if anybody on this call is doing vibe coding, but I can tell you that my husband, who shares an office with me, that is he basically is done with work and then just sits at his desk and vibe codes all night long. I have no idea what he's doing.
So I guess that would be a no.
If you don't know what vibe coding is, it's basically utilizing AI you don't actually have to know how to code. You just have to tell AI what to do. Montes, what are you building with vibe coding?
I want to build so they can talk to each other.
What was that? You cut out for a second.
Yeah.
I'm saying I would like to build a connector for the database to each other.
Good one.
So practical.
Yeah, that's neat.
And I totally understand the need for that given the work that you do.
Well, I'm going to roll through, I'm going to reshare my screen, and I think I'm going to just roll through. I had a couple reflection questions. And if anybody would like to comment in the chat, we don't have to comment on them all, but maybe if one jumps out at you and you want to reflect in the chat, that would be awesome. We kind of did our share out to the extent that we could. So some last things to think about. Honestly, think, is there one small manageable step you can take next week to put one of these ideas into practice in some way? And from what I'm seeing, it seems like the Puzzle Maker, surprisingly, it is a nice little inroad for people to give it a try. And then another thing to think about is, where could AI save you in your planning? I noticed someone commented about very, very early on in the chat, I think it was you, Amanda, talking about, well, yes, AI can help us do correspondence, like email correspondence. It can just kind of help you gather your thoughts together, So the more tasks you think about AI doing for you, the more you'll be like, oh my gosh, it could do this. Oh my goodness, it could do this as well. So it's always important to sort of think through, where could it help me save just a little bit of time? Because that's the key. And then, of course, how could it support different learners? Are there things we can now do that we couldn't do before to support some of the learners in different ways? And if we're going to be using AI with kiddos, as I mentioned before, what would you want the students to understand and know before we start getting them involved with AI? How are we going to put up those guardrails for those kiddos? So I'm really happy to have been here with you today. We're a vibrant group. I love it. And I hope you found something that you could take back with you and found useful. So I thank you for your kind attention, and thank you, Lauren. And certainly if you have any questions, reach out. The email's there on the screen, and we'll be following up with the video recording. And you guys already have the slide deck link. So we're happy to help in however we can.
Yeah, and we'll stay on for just a few minutes in case there are any questions that come through, but I know we're a few minutes over time. So if you need to jump, totally understand. If you have any questions, please stay on and we're happy to answer them.
Of course.
But thank you, Mary. It's always so informative. You have the best examples. I feel like it's like real classroom examples, which is really, really helpful to see. So
I'm good. Well, I'm eager to get my hands on this recipe now. You've got me all excited.
I was trying to see if I have access to it, and I don't think I do. So Molly's been building this for like a month now, so it's really fun to like see it.
It is
like come to life.
It is really fun to work on a project, and then launch it with the students and just, see how they respond to it. There's just something so rewarding about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so cute.
Could I ask a question?
Of course.
Yes,
I've
yeah,
been
go for it.
trying to use Canva to generate an image, and I was just having it try to generate an image of my class, like in a cartoon style or like a watercolor style. But I can't seem to get like the numbers right or the ethnicity of the students right. And I don't know if maybe Canva isn't the right way to do this. I even uploaded a picture of my class, but they
I would
the numbers and everything. So well, yeah.
Yeah. So I would use probably Nano Banana, like the Gemini generator for that.
Okay.
It works a little better for that task. I always say it in kind of a guarded way, only because it's always putting students' faces and things up into AI is not advised. And I know they show on like social media and reels all these classrooms with these cute pictures that they've converted into like coloring pages for kids.
Yeah.
But there's that little part of me that it's like, I love the idea and I know it's cute for kids, but then for the safety component, they don't recommend, uploading pictures of your classrooms into AI. So
even with Gemini, which if you use it underneath your Google Workspace, your education account, it doesn't go out into the world. I still wouldn't recommend uploading pictures of your students, but an alternative is you could have each student, write their name and write like 3 or 4 physical descriptives of themselves.
Yeah.
Like I have short brown hair, light brown skin, my eyes are blue, and then put that in there and even do it like decide what style. Like, do you want everybody to look like Lego characters? Do you want everybody to look like Pixar or Neon Glow? But having them decide what their physical descriptions are, I think would probably work.
Okay, that's a neat idea.
Yeah. And it's a safer idea.
One thing that I've seen done before, again, depending on how much time you have, is a lot of times we have students do like self-portraits or they draw themselves. Even if they draw themselves, doing something like who was it? Somebody did it where they were drawing themselves, like, what would I look like as a paleontologist? And so it was them drawing themselves as a scientist with all their,
that was
paraphernalia. That was Eric.
Cross. Yeah, he did that.
And then you upload that into Canva and say, make this look realistic, make this look like a cartoon, make this look like a, however, whatever you want it to be. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You can call it a time machine project. I don't know. But I love that because then again, it's not their actual likeness. It's just the, like their likeness of their likeness, which is a little safer.
Okay, cool. I will try that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, for your question. Okay, we'll stay on just another minute in case there's any other questions that anybody has. And then we will go ahead and jump off. Go ahead and end the recording.
Thank you, ladies, for your help. And there's no Google form reflection or review that I need to fill out for this session.
No, you're all good.
Okay.
Thank you for checking.